picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Welcome back to the room, and as you can see, the room is starting to fill up. Now, a lot of people don't know that when I built this room, I ended up taking a lot of kits out of the rest of the house and moving them down into this room. Well, the rest of the house has been slowly filling back up, and this, Lord knows, this room has been filling up. So I have to start thinking about what is going to be good from a space saving point of view. And if you'll notice, way up there, see that box way up at the ceiling level? That is a box that has been reserved for that bit of shelf space, and I think it may be time to pull that box down and build that kit. Now the only problem, of course, is I have to go get a ladder so that I can go reach that box. It's not as easy as said, easy as a thing as said as it is to be done. So wish me luck that I don't fall and hurt the captain there. Okay, so it wasn't easy and it wasn't pretty to get the box down from the top shelf in the display room, but here it is, and let's dig into it. And here is the victim for the next few weeks. It is the 31-inch Nautilus. Now this is from Masterpiece Models, originally patterned by Scott Brodeen. The way I say originally is because I've built this before. It was about 10 plus years ago. Built this for a good friend who is a Nautilus nut. He collects Nautili. I guess that's the plural of Nautilus, Nautiluses, Nautili. It's not a lie, I did it. But anyway, the one that I built back then was resin. This is plastic. It is obviously cast from the same parts because I recognize it's the same exact part breakdown. And I'll tell you the truth, this was an extra window insert from way back in the day, and not only does it fit this kit exactly, it's an identical match for the parts that came with it. So I know this is in fact from the same molds. But like I said, that one was resin. This is plastic, and I've got my doubts about it. I don't know how well it's going to clean up. I don't know how well it's going to paint. I know that I need to clean it off, wipe it down. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done on it, but I need to wipe it down and put some primer on it so I can even see what I'm dealing with, because there's a lot of seam work here that needs to be done. A lot of little cleanups here and there that need to be accomplished. Now, the biggest bummer about this, and I may have said this once before back when I was first opening the kit, because I got this at the Nats show in Chattanooga. I came back and I looked through the box, and the biggest disappointment in this kit was that the parts that I remember being done in white metal are in fact plastic in this iteration, which means they're less substantial, they're less beefy, and for like things like the anchors and the little tie downs, that also means they're going to be wimpier. They're not metal. They're going to be more delicate and not fun to work with. So I'm not looking forward to that. That's kind of why this even went back up on the shelf, was when I was kind of disappointed with that. But I am planning on doing a well, let's get the camera back on the stand. Okay, so we're back on the tripod. What I was saying about this being black plastic and not resin, it means I don't have to worry about resin dust. That's a good thing, because there will be some drilling and some cleaning out. So I don't have to worry about resin dust. But I am kind of concerned about how well the plastic is going to work. I don't know how stable it is. I don't know how easy it will be to keep its shape. All kinds of things. This was the part that I was talking about. This was the part. This is the same part in this iteration. Now, the reason number one to get a primer coat on this is because black is kind of hard to see the details in. and especially it's going to be nasty trying to show up on camera. Thank you, Mr. Compressor. So that kind of cleanup is going to be necessary, and this is what I was talking about as far as cleaning up pieces that were in flash, that have flash on them. These were well, these two pieces were resin, but the smaller details were all in metal, like these frames that were in metal. These are the frames that go over the windows here, the main parlor windows, and that is, I just don't know how well that's going to work. I may end up remaking those completely out of tube stock, you know, sheet styrene, whatever. I'm not wild about looking forward to doing that. And these are the tie downs, and as you can see, they're just sitting on a very thin sheet of plastic. And here we have the famous googly eyes, because you need googly eyes for all of these. Now, like I said, I am planning on lighting this. My question is whether I'm planning on lighting both sides, because you saw where the box was up on the shelf. This ship is going back up on that shelf in the same position where that box is. So do I bother lighting up? Like, I would light up both of the alligator eyes. I would light up the cabin, or the control room, the bridge. I would certainly light up this side. But do I light up this side as well, knowing full well that that's going to be against the wall and shining against the wall all the time? Something in my brain tells me to go ahead and do that, if only for the mobility factor of, you know, someday if I want to flip this thing around, I've got lights on both sides. So that's kind of where what I'm noodling at, and that means I also got to drill these guys out to get lights up in there, and that might not be easy because this is solid. So I don't know whether I can get a light up in there. I'm going to have to drill blindly into it and then drill up and hope that I match. So those would be SM LEDs. That's a no-brainer. If I was going to do that, that'd be SM LEDs. They would be, if I'm remembering correctly, these would be amber. There'd be a green bulb in the bridge. There would be white lights around the salon spotlights. So I think it could be fun, and I think, see, here are the 4 standoffs that go back to the ring that goes around the propeller, and those were nice beefy metal before, and I don't know if this plastic is going to be what I'm looking for. So the cleanup of these parts is going to be job 1, so I can really see what I'm looking for, and then job 2 is going to be putting this base together, because I'm really going to need something to sit this in while I'm working on it. And it comes with this lovely stand, but you know, more than it being a lovely stand, it's a bloody necessity when it comes to being able to work on it. Here, this is the ring that goes around the propeller, so it's pretty beefy. But I'm remembering these things in resin and wishing, like, these are the really thin anchors, and I'm still investigating the parts. So this is the victim for the next few weeks. So come aboard, why don't you? Oh, and I wanted to say, hey, I was checking my site today, or checking the channel today. I have 5,000 subscribers. I've reached the 5K mark. So thank you, all you people who stuck around. I don't get 5,000 views a week, so obviously not everybody is watching everything. But hey, it's a good round number, and thank you for being a part of it. Okay, I've been cleaning up some parts, and I'm going to retract my earlier statement. This is clearly not plastic. This is gel coat, I think. I think it's the stuff, I know it's, I can tell by the, every time that compressor comes on. Anyway, this reminds me more of the stuff that Steve Neal would use on the inside of a fiberglass mold. This is what strikes me as what this is all made of. I thought it was regular plastic. It cannot be. I think it is, it's some sort of gel coat, which now that I'm getting into these smaller parts, they are more substantial and more beefy than I thought they were going to be, and don't think it's going to be near the problem I was dreading. I'm just cleaning up the stand first and getting it glued together so that I can have something to set this beast in while I'm working on it. But I haven't cleaned up all the parts. I need to get out the Dremel for that, but I've gotten them kind of broken apart off of their trees and somewhat cleaned up. It's getting, I got a little stash here of the stuff. I keep wanting to call that plastic. But it's not resin. It's not the 2-part white resin, and it's not aluminite. So it's got to be that other stuff, and I'm sure it's got a chemical name or a name it goes by, but I'm just going to call it gel coat for the time being. Morning, welcome back, or good afternoon, welcome back. I'm sorry, I'm getting a late start today. I was at the dentist this morning. Always a wonderful way to start your day, because you know anything that comes after a good teeth cleaning has got to be better. So that's how I started my day. Hi, how are you? So I'm back at cleaning these parts for the Nautilus. And I like this black material. Now, I still don't know exactly what it is. I'm sure I've been told at one point or another. It is, no, I'm not going to go speculate again. It's not, it may be the black aluminite, I'm not sure. It's not your typical resin. It doesn't have the smell, doesn't have the powder, doesn't have the flaking of a typical resin. It is not styrene plastic. It doesn't sand like plastic. It sands kind of like resin, but not nearly as powdery. Anyway, I say all that to say this. It cleans up very nicely and very easily, but I need to make sure, because it's kind of soft, that I don't go overboard with it. A boat going overboard. Because this is literally a rivet counter's nightmare, and I'm afraid if I sand it too aggressively, I could sand off some rivets, and I don't want to start down that road. So I'm taking care. I went over to, since it was by the dentist's place, I went to the local Klingspor showcase storeroom. And good Lord, that's man porn in there. Anything you need for woodworking, you can find at the Klingspor store. And so I picked up a fine sanding drum that will fit in the Dremel with some fine sandpapers, so that I could do some of this delicate, more delicate work on a smaller radius sandpaper, and it will fit into the, like I say, it'll fit into the Dremel with no problem, but it'll hopefully help on some of the more tedious sanding that needs to be done. See, this is the typical drum that I use in the Dremel, but this is the smaller one. This is what I need for these more intricate areas of sanding. Oh, that's going to be nice. That's going to do nice things. So, continuing, like I said, I'm continuing to clean up these parts. And it's supposed to, even though it is overcast and ugly out, it is supposed to get up near 70 today. So it might be the best opportunity I'm going to have in the near future for priming. So I want to get a good primer coat, particularly on this big hull, because that's going to show me where there's any errors or rough spots or places that need patching or sanding. This black material does not show up flaws. It's sort of like white, you know, white and black are the two extremes, and everything. You don't see flaws in them very easily. So that's why I want to take it back to a gray primer. And because for some reason the gray just shows all the things, all the mistakes, all the seams, shows that better than any other color I've found. So I want to get a good primer coat of the gray on this today, and then I'm going to start doing things like this where I need to run. This is, I'm sorry I'm rambling now, but I remember these hatches being metal, and this is going to be someplace where I know I'm going to miss the metal because these hatches have very delicate hinges on them, and I'm afraid that I might end up ripping through them in the plastic version rather than, or this okay, we'll call it a resin version. It might not stand up to the abuse that a metal piece would. So that's what I'm being very careful on now. And I am, like I said, I'm going through and taking the tiny files to clean these areas that I distinctly remember being white metal before. So they used the same molds that the white metal ones were used in, because I recognize even down to recognizing the same amount of flash, but the metal was a lot easier to clean up. Well, this is just worlds better. You don't see it by spraying it gray. I am seeing all of the things that need sanding or patching, or more importantly, it shows me the tiny holes that I need to drill out for the hinges on the hatches and things like that that I wasn't seeing very clearly, like this how this joins here. Wasn't seeing that very clearly in the black, but now with the silver on it, or the gray on it, I certainly can. So I'm going to put this back in the cradle here. The top part is still outside because it has the bottom side of these rakes are on the top half part, so I had to turn that over and paint those bits. So it's going well. It's like I say, it's starting to cloud up outside, so I might want to make quick like a bunny here and get some more of these hull pieces at least basically prime coated, so that I can have them to work on once the weather turns foul. Hello everybody, it's Thursday morning. You may notice a slightly slower, nay, more deliberate pace I'm taking with this kit, because I've realized the videos I've been shooting have been getting up over an hour in length, and they're usually about an hour and a half before I start editing. And I realize maybe perhaps I am doing too much in a week. I could slow down. I could pace myself a little better. So that's why I'm taking more deliberate steps with this kit. And another thing about it is I would say there's not a lot of building to do on this kit, but there is a lot of cleaning up of parts to do to this kit. The cast parts, there's going to be a lot more scratch building on this kit to replace parts like these rings that go over the salon domes. I don't think I'll end up using them. I know they were problematic even when they were cast in metal, but at least the metal casted ones, you could kind of straighten out the legs of it. You could do more with the metal and it would retain that shape. These plastic ones, I don't have much hope for them at all by the time I clean them up. So I may end up just making new for those. That's going to be not easy, but it's going to, I think, be more rewarding in the long run. Also, I have been cutting out the domes. Now, a lot of the googly eyes are going to carry us a long way for all of these, and there you can see one in place, for all of these guys there'll be lights behind them, and I am going to light them. And that's another thing. I have sent off an order to Evans Lighting for some chip warm white LEDs. So I'm waiting for those to come, but I'm not in any great hurry. But these will all be handled with googly eyes and chip LEDs. There are, however, 4 big windows, and they're 4 domes. They are domes that go over the sides on both of them. And again, these are the things that are covered by these rings that I don't know about. So there's two of these, one on each side. And there's two of these. These go up. These are the very iconic domes that go over the, that go inside the bridge there. And these are a little loose. I'm going to have to do something. I think I sanded too much out of the insides of here to clean up those edges. And when I did, I ended up making them a little small, or I'm making them a little large. So I may have to go back in and fill that with maybe give it a good coating of a microcrystal clear or something, just to build up that inside edge before I glue these in. And that's a long way down the road because much work has to be done on these first. But these are vacuformed. And vacuforming and me do not get along that well together always, because a lot of times, truth be told, it's because of bad vacuforming. Either they use a material that is too thin, or there'll be ripples in it, or whatever. These ones are very well cast. These are ones that are very well vacuformed, and they did the one thing that I really appreciate, and that is to really bump up the amount of flash that goes. You need this part. This part is extraneous. This goes into the piece, and they really bumped the length of that up, which I like, because that means you've got plenty of material not only to grip it by, but you've got plenty of material to gently and incrementally sand down until you get to the part that you actually need. And I like that a lot, particularly as somebody who doesn't deal with vacuform very well. Having that margin of error is crucial for me. And there's nothing I hate more than getting a piece of Vacuform where it's vacuformed to the exact size that you need, and you've got no wiggle room when it comes to trimming it out or sanding it off. So this is very, very well done, and what it allows me to do is to put it in place, go back on the inside of it with the Sharpie, and draw the line. A line must be drawn here, but to draw a line of what I actually need and what I can cut off, and that helps me tremendously. And the fact that it is thick enough, it will stand up to being cut with scissors or knives without folding in on itself or being really weak. And I appreciate that too. It's the next best thing to, when it's this thick, it's the next best thing to a styrene dome. So it's been very good and very easy to work with, so kudos on that. But I'm working with just these parts in front of me, and there's something refreshing and therapeutic about having your entire world right here on the desk in front of you. This is all you need to worry about. You don't have to go out and have an airbrush running, have power tools up and running. If you can do all of this with some files, maybe a Dremel, but all you need is a good sharp X-Acto knife, a pin vise, and some files, and you can get everything you need to get done in front of you. Not having a lot of parts on this kit means you can spend more time and attention on each part, and that includes on this wonderfully cast upper deck, making sure things like, the hatch works. And this was something that I was afraid was going to be more of a problem than it turned out to be. I'm used to these being white metal, and the tiny, tiny holes that you need to put in the hinges, I was afraid the plastic was going to be too delicate for that, but it does seem, or the resin, it does seem to be working. I just would feel more comfortable with those if they were white metal for that very reason. And the other thing is bending some wire to make these ladder rungs. You drill the holes out with your pin vise. The holes are indented, and it's another good reason to put a primer coat on them. I would never have seen all those holes in the black resin, but once I put the primer coat on them, I could see the indents where the drill needed to go. But let's see. So you take some thin wire. The wire that comes with the kit is too thin. Not my favorite, so I have something that's a little beefier. I had it in my stash box, and I found that by gauging how wide or how far apart the holes were, it is the exact width of, where did it go? It was right here. Oh, it's the exact width of this file at this point where the file starts and the metal stops. So I could take my piece of wire and simply bend it over top of the file and get, because I'm using this triangle file, get some really sharp corners on it. And I'm not worrying if the sides of the rungs are a little long, because I can trim those if I want to, but here's the there's the rung. I cut that one off at, so yes, you need wire cutters. I'm sorry, I add that to the list of tools that you need. But because how thick the wall, the cast wall is, I can leave these rungs a little long and put them into the holes and then gauge the ladder rung itself as to how far I want it to stick out, and kind of fiddle with that. And there you go. And I think putting these in at this stage will be good, because then any more painting will actually incorporate the rungs and make them look more a part of the ship, rather than if they had been stuck on. Now, if I don't like how far out they stick or how square they are, because I followed the holes and the holes might not have been perfect, or the resulting drilling might not have been perfect, I could take the pair of, again, I could take the pair of needle nose and just, once it's glued, I can kind of tweak them to level them out. But having everything I need right here in front of me is a refreshing thing, not having to jump up, get out of the way, and find something from across the room. Also, I found that straight pins, these straight pins are a great size for the hinges. Now, I need to see if I've got any straight pins in the house that don't have these heads on them, that just have the regular flat head, because that would be the perfect size to act as a rivet on one end of the, on one end of the hinge. I just use that pin as the hinge mechanism. So we've got one hatch in place. Right, continuing my slow and steady work today, I've got one side of the ladder rungs in, and all I need to do now is tack them in place with a little bit of CA. And you know, I'm thinking I might just do that from the inside. What a unique idea that would be, because they do protrude to the inside. I wonder about that. I like the way they look. I gotta do the other side now, but getting them all flush, not flush, but parallel and lined up, and the same, sticking out the same distance. They're kind of ragged, only because they're not perfectly staple shaped. But I think it's time to glue these down. Good morning, welcome back. It is Friday, the last work day of the week, and work is continuing on the Nautilus. And yes, the camera is on the tripod, but I am holding the tripod ever so still, because frankly this kit is kind of big, and getting the whole thing on camera at one time, particularly when I want to point out little details, is a bit of a treat if you are on the tripod, because then I got to heft the kit up and show it to the camera, which is not great. So what I've been doing today and yesterday and into today is I've been going around it with a semicircular file and just filing the edges and getting rid of some of the flash and the little casting boogers that are on there. And basically it's you take the flat file on the front edge, you take the curved part of the file, and you work the curved seams. I gotta tell you, these things are sharpened so much that I'm afraid I could do bodily damage to myself if that thing were to fall. But things like this, now these had to be opened up. There was a space in between there that was filled in with resin, and you just have to clean it up. Not all of them are that way. The fronts of these back rudders are not, or diving planes. Those aren't actually rudders, those are planes, diving planes. My nautical terminology will be wrong, so get used to that. But now I'm thinking of things like, okay, I know how this is going to be displayed. It's going to be displayed on a very high shelf. Maybe not all of its life, but certainly that's where the majority of its time is going to be spent, on this high shelf. And I'm not going to be able to get to it to turn the lights on and off. Well, that would be a perfect candidate for a remote then, wouldn't it? Evans Lighting sells a remote switch that works with their tiny SM LEDs, which is what I will be using for all of the lighting on this. I'll be using SM LEDs. And it's designed to hold, it'll take the load of those lights. Plus it has a dimming feature that allows me to dial down the brightness, which I think is going to be necessary especially when I get all of these lights in one place. I'm feeling it's going to be very bright. So being able to dim those is going to be great. But I'm going to have lights here. I'm going to have lights in the cabin. But that brings me to the point of, how do I access those? Well, I can turn them on and off with the remote, so everything's happy there. But even the remote, when it is on, does suck power. It's minimal. Evans Lighting on their website says, yes, it does draw a tiny bit of power even when it's off. So I will need to have a permanent kill switch on the battery power, just something that I won't get to except for when I am not using this for extended periods of time. And the second thing is, it's going to be way up on the top shelf. I can't run wiring to it. It's going to have to be done off a battery. Well, how do I get the battery in and out of here? Because if I cut into any portion of this hull to make a battery hatch, it means messing up little tiny rivets that I'm going to have to put back, and nobody wants that. So I'm thinking, best place, some people would say, well, just take this front plate here, put it on magnets and stick it like that so that you can just pull that off. Well, you can, but I don't want to, because I'm going to have a ton of SM LEDs here that are all running on that really delicate magnet wire, and I don't want to run the risk of moving magnet wire in and out, because that just makes it more brittle and it's more prone to snap. I don't want to run a line out of the bottom of the ship to a stand or anything like that, because then that kind of looks cheap too. I mean, you've got all this interior space. It's a crying shame if you don't use it. So I'm thinking, a lot of people take off this top deck and they put the batteries inside there, which can be problematic if you are building your bridge here, because then you've got wiring that is going to be interfering with that. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is make this removable, but leave the cabin attached. The final problem with this is that this piece here, you it kind of locks the cabin down. You can't really slide this out from under that piece. So what I'm going to do is make this part of this and glue it together right here at the front, so that when you pick up the whole thing, that comes off as part of it. And then you'll have the interior with all of your lighting and everything staying part of your that stays as part of the superstructure, and I just open up this hole here and sink the battery down into it from there. Easy enough to do, I think, and I want to leave this in place because this tube here needs to be lit. Yes, there's green ambient light in the bridge itself, but then you've got this tube that needs to be lit up, and I can light that from the bottom with an SMLED, shine it up through the bottom of the tube there, and kind of lay that in place. Now the only thing that is ruined by this idea is the crocodile eyes. These eyes up here, unless I put really strong wiring on them, won't be able to light up, because that wiring now is in play when I do this. So I've got to have to think about that. Right now I've got googly eyes in the crocodile eyes there, and it really does show up the idea that they are eyes, because I forgot to cut the little irises out of them. But if I want to light those, then I've got to find a way to make some stronger wiring that won't be interfered with. So that's something I got to ponder. Okay, I can see I need to do a little bit more refining and tweaking on this front hatch. I've got everything lined up the way I think. Now that I think I know how I'm going to do everything, I'm going to go ahead and glue this joint down to here, and then it will attach and unattach at that point. But once I do that, that sets in stone the front point of this bridge module. I'm using my Starfleet parlance, the cabin exterior. This has to be nailed in stone at that point, and then to make this fit over the hatch below it, I need to do some refining, and I think the refining is going to have to come off of this edge here. I can't really monkey too much with the lid of the hatch. That's pretty much set. So in order to make it match up with what's going on underneath it, I think I need to sand down. See, this is more or less flat across. Let me see if I get my pointing tools out. This is pretty much flat across. I need to bevel it down, much like this one here has got a bevel in it, only this one bevels toward the back. You can see it's taller at the top than it is at the back, and that's so it's designed to go, the hatch is designed to fit over it. I think I need to do something similar, but in this case I need to bevel it like that, at that angle, so that it's shorter at the back than it is at the front, and that will allow the hatch to close over it more tightly than it does right now, because right now the top is kicking up, and if I can sand that down, then it should level out or seal flatter all the way around. Okay, I think I've got the intersection of these three parts dialed in, to use the hip lingo, but I won't be gluing it down yet, because there's much more work that needs done on the cabin, or the crocodile eyes, before I can glue this part to it. It's just gonna be too fragile to keep monkeying with that. So this seems to be sitting nicely when right now the cabin is inside, or the interior walls are inside the cabin, and I've got some toothpicks in there to spread them out, just to keep them out against the outside walls while the glue sets. The only glue that I've got in here is between the two halves of the interior walls. It is not glued into the see, I can pull this out. It's not glued into the superstructure there, so this can turn around and, let me get these toothpicks out of here. This goes in something like that, but I want to make sure that it's got the proper spread at the base. This would actually sit something like this. Put this tube down, and then that sits over top of it. Something like that. There you go. The tube goes at a weird angle, and I need to sand out the bottom of this so that it sits at that weird angle. It's not straight up and down like you would think. It's actually tilted. But now I think I've got it stuck. Oh, it's too tight. I need to drill out that hole a little bit more. Can't do this with one hand. Can't pull it back out. This can only sit so far into the top piece, but the bottom piece actually sinks down into the interior of the hull. And once I get that angle determined and in the right orientation, then I can glue that tube in place and put the light underneath it. And this will be a cool white light. So much of what's going on out here will be warm lighting. I'm thinking that these will all be warm lights, but these two I might do in cool light just to break it up a little bit. And then of course we've got the green cabin lighting here. And if I can get the crocodile eyes lit up, those would be orange or amber. So thinking of all this in the background while I am trying to see how these parts are going to be fitting. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety as far as getting something done to show off today. You know how I like to end my Fridays with something showy. So I'm thinking I want to work in this area. I guess you can say I am feeling a little cabin pressure. To get something done in here, even if it's just a question of having the having it just sat down in place, because I'm well away from being ready to put things like the wheelhouse down. Well, we'll start calling that the wheelhouse because that's where the wheel is. Do I have my tweezers? Yes, I have my tweezers. The wheel goes, the wheels on the sub go round and round, yes. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah, the wheel will go something like that. I think I nipped off too much of the bottom of that, but it goes like that. So of course the flooring and everything around it will need to be painted before I can close that up. But if I put the green lights in the ceiling here and let them shine down, then they will come out the big portholes without being, blaringly obvious. I'm trying to see whether one bulb will do it or whether I need to add two. But I'm hoping that just one bulb will do it. I always like this time of the build where I'm starting to rough in the lighting and I'm starting to see some results of how things are going to work. And here, the orange light in the gator eye, I think, is going to be quite a nice thing. And this magnet wire is minimal enough that I can fit it in between the insert of the cabin and all of that. My goal is to run wiring down to maybe behind where this will end up, maybe back here somewhere, and then I can make a little jack to plug it into, so that I'm not dealing with delicate wiring all the time. But getting those two wires in, getting those two lights in, that will go a long way towards me getting ready to kind of finish with this part. I can put the, can't put the fish bowls in until way down the line after we've got a lot more painted. But I can start getting, if I could put that jack on there, that would go a long way to finishing the construction on this part, and I can kind of set it aside. Okay, so I've got them tacked into place, both of them, tacked into place with a little CA, and now what I'm going to do is put a big old drop of clear epoxy over top of them to kind of seal them in. I'm not going to be able to do the entire lens in that CA or in the epoxy, but I can do enough that when I cut the googly eye and put it over top of it, well, I might want to just do the googly eye, get those cut and ready, fill the area with epoxy, and then push the googly eye up into it. That may be the way to go. I'll get back to you and let you know how it turned out. Okay, trying out the green cabin light, and I can already tell that light leaks are going to be an issue. I may have to add additional flanges under here, because even when I press that down, it does not completely disappear. So I don't know whether I'm probably end up using magnets to hold this top deck down, but I can see where I might need to beef up, just put an inside flange in there to cover over that area where the light leak is going to happen. But I'm by and large very happy with those results. I've got one of the windows just kind of sitting in place there to show how that would look. This is light spill here. This is actually light shine. So that's not a light leak. That's light shining out of the window. I'm not worried about that. I am more concerned about this seam here. Coming along nicely, I think. Always, even after you spend a lot of time cleaning and putting and constructing and priming and all that, it's only when you start seeing the lights go on that, to me, the project starts to take off. Okay, doing the last hatch, which is on the belly, and of course this is always the way. It beautiful, matches up perfectly. It's a shame you won't see it that much, but this one actually works very well and closes off very evenly. Didn't need a lot of finagling to get it done. But so of course it's the one that's on the bottom. It's the least visible one. I've also got the little screw hooky thing going on in here. A little corkscrew device. That's going in. And I think the only last bit that really hangs off the bottom are the anchors, and that's kind of a last minute final touch type of thing. But yeah, I'm going in through here and just doing the same type of cleanup that I did with the top and sides. There's a couple of broken tips here that I might take some epoxy sculpting to try to rebuild those. It's a question really how much is going to be seen in the long run. So that's the kind of final touchy touch work I'm doing here. I've got to clean out the joint here where the back rudder goes, tail rudder goes, and the shaft where the propeller goes. Now, I had at one point a fever dream about actually putting a motor here and motorizing this, but because of how soft this resin is, I know that if I did, it would just wear it out completely. And now if I had like a nice bearing to put in there, I wouldn't think twice about it. But I know that as soon as I hook that up to a motor, it would just spin and heat up and end up wearing it out. So no spinning propeller on this. Okay, jumping around to the propeller area, I've got the area cleaned out here for the rudder, and of course this is where your propeller would be. And then there is this guard, which doesn't really guard anything since it doesn't cover the perimeter of the blade, but goes here. That's going to need to be kind of pushed in place. And then there's a couple of stringers that go from here out to the circle. So I can see an area right here that I'm going to have to build up with epoxy sculpt, where there was a chunk taken out, and I think that maybe just wasn't cast very well in that one spot. So I think I can level that back up with a little bit of epoxy sculpt. Okay, trying to start to wind down today, wind down for this first week of building, and thinking more along the lines of how I've got to position whatever battery I end up putting in here. So let's say this part comes off, and I've only got the 2 wires going up into the these lights up at the top, the crocodile eyes. If I can cut a pocket out of here, or maybe even just widen, let's say, grab a pencil here, if I widen out this pocket to this point, something like that, And then I end up putting the cabin where it's going to go. Cabin's going to go up something like that. So the cabin goes there, and then I widen that out and I make a little pocket for the battery to sit down in. Then I think that does what I want it to do. Now it doesn't look like it's the easiest thing to get to here, but the top and bottom of this kit still have not been put together. And that's going to allow me all kinds of room. And there's a lot of stuff, all the details at the back with the propeller and whatnot, I can't even properly put together until I have glued the top and bottom of this ship together. So this area here is, let me take this piece always wants to fall off, so we get that out of the way. So say we put all of this in. This is going to be covered up by this spine piece here. So if I make all of my cuts forward of this line, I'm in pretty good shape. This whole piece here has to be pushed forward in order to make this hatch up here line up. I might need to move. This is why I want to move the camera around and not the kit, because the kit is big and unwieldy. Okay, so we move this around. I need to get my turntable out. That's what needs to happen. Okay, let's pull all of this stuff down. There's going to be a bit of scratch building that needs to get done to make all of this work, and unfortunately the biggest bit is going to be remaking the things that go in front of these domes and down here. But that's not your problem. That's for me to worry about. Getting back to what I was saying, if I cut my access in here, cut that area out, then I will be freer to make a battery pocket. But like I said, the top and bottom is not glued together at all, so I could cut this area out and work at it from underneath and do all kinds of fun stuff before we're ready to close it all up. Let's see, where else am we? I also need to put in the tube that goes here and light that from the bottom. So we're to the point now where once we figure out how much more cutting we need to do all the cutting, then we can go back in and start doing the painting, because this will need to be almost completely done and painted before we join top and bottom. So, oh, the tube is stuck there. That's why I couldn't see it. Okay, so that goes in. We glue that down, and then we get a permanent wiring glue down so that we're not jockeying that wire around more than we have to. But outside of getting the inside of the cabin painted, which I did not get done today, that should be the next step. We got to paint this floor and all of that so that we're ready to cover it up with this. So it looks something like that. There we go. Yes, I'm on Steadicam now. Ooh. But got quite a bit done today, although you can't really see it at first glance. I did get all of these seams sanded or filed so that they're clean and ready to go. I want to avoid unnecessary coats of primer, because all of those rivets will end up getting buried if I put too many coats of paint on it. If I can do away with one coat of primer like it's got now, and then start laying on the top coats, it will be in better shape, because then it won't be covered up by a bunch of primer coats. The last thing to do really are to put the little cleats, the little tie downs on, and that means cleaning them off of this really poorly formed sheet here. Or I might clean some of those off this afternoon and see how well those are going to go down. Okay, the last little details I have to worry about are these cleats on the deck, and I find actually it's easier, since they're so fragile, is just to clean off the bottom of them and then glue them down to the deck and then start doing the filing, because then you're using the whole ship as a hold down, and you're not trying to clean these up either by holding them between your fingers or on the sprue, because or on that little sheet. So I've got let's see, I've got 2 more of the large ones, and then I've got 4 small ones. So I've got a few more of those to do today, and I think that would be a good stopping point. Okay, all the little tie downs and stanchions are on, and yes, they were easier to file and shape once they were glued down, because then you can get in and around them with the files and clean them up in a way that you couldn't do when they were loose. All I needed to do was to clean the bottom spot off so that I could get them glued down. Everything else is gravy after that. And that's where we're going to, I think that's enough work for 1 week on this. Shouldn't take forever to do, but I don't want to be rushing it. I like this new leisurely pace. And that's where we're going to end it this week. Week 1 on the Nautilus. You know, week 1s are never really that sexy unless you are finishing the entire ship or the entire kit in 1 week. So if it's going to be a multi-week project, week 1 is generally foundational. And that's what this has been about. Getting the parts out, getting them cleaned up, getting them cut up in some cases. There was a lot of little niggling flash to worry about, and I'm seeing if I can even find these 2 parts. This part for the bridge, or for the wheelhouse, is tiny, it's wee, it's small, and it is fragile. And it was no fun to work with, and I was used to that being in metal. It would be a lot more resilient, but it is in that plastic, and it is very fragile. So getting this stuff done, getting the brain work figured out of how I'm going to logistically build this and light it and all that, that was important. But that stuff's behind us now, and now it's just plowing through, sailing straight ahead with the construction, and then getting some color on this thing. Once I get the wheelhouse painted, then everything else is in my wheelhouse, because there's my wheelhouse. You ever wondered, if someone ever asked you a question about what is in your wheelhouse, there's your wheelhouse, and right now nothing is in it. I'm rambling now, so I'll just sign off and say be good to each other, take care out there, wash your hands, don't sneeze on people, and we'll see you here next time.